Hello, I'm Zahir Alam. Welcome you all on Frankly Speaking. Our today's guest is Dr. Wen Lippert, Resident Director of Washington-based National Democratic Institute in Bangladesh. Dear viewers, NDI had started to visit to Bangladesh in 1985 and has had a permanent office in the country since 1999. NDI has been working with political parties, civil society, and academics to strengthen and promote democratic values. And Lippert joined NDI in 2003, having spent 20 years working on political and governance issues both in his native Canada and abroad. Welcome, Dr. Wen Lippert on Frankly Speaking.
Thank you very much.
Lippert, NDI has been conducting their democratic development program over 100 countries, we know, so far. So what are the main, your strategic goal in your mind from NDI's part in Bangladesh?
We have been in Bangladesh, as you said, since 1985 and with permanent office. In this particular part of NDI's work in Bangladesh, which began in 2003, we had three areas where we were working and continue to work. I should say we do continue to work. First of all was political party strengthening, in which we held a number of mid-level leader training courses around the country. I've been to an amazing number of district towns in Bangladesh, and I must say Bangladesh is a very beautiful country, and it really helps to appreciate that by getting on a docket.
I see.
And we ran that program until we decided to start shifting towards more election-related work. So we had a very extensive program for training polling agents for the various political parties. As well, we had a pre-election assessment mission last September. As you recall, Tom Daschle, former senator, headed up the delegation, which included Mike Moore, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, and Musa Kua, former cabinet minister in Cambodia. What we then did, shifting towards the election, is we brought over a team of long-term election observers, and we would have brought a short-term observer mission had the election gone ahead as scheduled. Now, we did have to make a statement that as the election had approached, that we had a fear that the results would not be considered as credible, and that was a concern that was shared by many in the international community, and therefore we made the decision. And
we know that under certain circumstances you have suspended your election monitoring mission and other activities. So now the election commission reconstitution process has already been started, you know, and they will go for some changes or take some steps or measures to holding a free and fair election. And but it has been much talked about issue of having a voter list, but you have significant concern about the sanctity of the voter list, and you made survey on this.
The electoral process has many components.
Yep.
The voters list is clearly an important one, but there's also
some other issues.
Party financing, candidates, the administration of the electoral process in terms of polling, what goes into voter education prior to it, the reading of the votes after the election. So there's many components, and while the voters list is one, there are other things. And so what's really important is to focus on building an overall credibility.
Yep.
And in that, NDI's work has not changed from what it was before January 22nd. That we're still trying to work with the political parties to provide the training and, to some degree, you know, the ideas as to how to increase their confidence in the political system.
What are the programs in your hand to strengthen their political activities or development of the democratic?
We obviously are interested in the voters list. We've done two major surveys in 2005 and 2006 on the voters list. As I said, the voters list is one component. It's an important component. As we await to see what the Election Commission is proposing, we are certainly available to consult, to bring in experts, but at this point we're waiting. We obviously am not going to be making suggestions just willy-nilly, but if there is a desire, we will certainly start that dialogue. As well, we remain in contact with the political parties who we believe are central to the electoral process. As well, there are some other basic work that we can be doing, certainly with civil society, on a variety of issues. So the work remains as it did prior to January 22nd. And the value that NDI has, I think, to the political process in Bangladesh is twofold. One, we can provide a forum where the political parties can speak to one another on neutral ground. And we've done that through our mid-level leader training courses, our poll agent training courses, and other more specialized forum, for instance, Parliament and the media. And we'll continue to provide that forum. As well, there's a certain amount of technical expertise we can provide. And the net effect of those is, we hope, is to build confidence in the system and confidence in the players of the system so that credibly the election will express the view of the people.
But you know that it has been much talked about the issue of introducing a voter ID card for the voters, apart from correction or making a fresh voter list. So did you have or do you have any assessment or study on introducing voter ID card for Bangladeshi voters?
We're not making any recommendations. Let me be clear on that. This is a sovereign choice that the people of Bangladesh and the institutions of Bangladesh will decide on whether they have a voter ID, a national ID. What we're certainly willing to do is that if there's a discussion, we could bring in some experts to discuss it. A voter ID is just a way to reduce the risk of electoral irregularities. It's one of many things. If the decision is made to do it, sure, it'll help. But honestly,
not the sole criteria.
It's not. It doesn't disqualify an election that you don't have a voter ID slate. It helps. For sure it helps. Just case in point, the first democratic election in South Africa took place without a voters list and without any voter ID. So if there's confidence in the system, it can deal with these specific issues, and these specific issues in turn are confidence-building measures. And you know, Bangladesh did have also 3 elections without voter ID card. But it helps, but it's not the end of the electoral process. You made and you released your results of the integrity of the second voter list, and you find some significant number of duplicate registrations in the in that survey. So, would you make any further survey when the Election Commission or the government will go for another steps for improving the voter list or making new voter lists? I think the important thing to realize about the voters list, again, as you say, it was duplicate names, but what was the process that led to those duplicate names? And what led to it was the fact that you have a method of compiling the voters list that really goes back into the last century when the population of Bangladesh was basically a stable rural population. social reality in Bangladesh has changed. You now have migration, and a fairly significant amount of it, from rural areas into
Urban
metropolitan
areas.
urban areas. And you've had the emergence of great and wonderful cities, such as Dhaka. But the process of the voters list has not changed to reflect that new social reality. And I think, and I would gather that there is an ongoing evaluation of how the voters list is put together to reflect and anticipate these new social changes in Bangladesh.
Okay, Dr. Lippert, we'll continue our talks. Today's guest is Dr. Wen Lippert, Resident Director of NDI, Bangladesh. Dr. Lippert, we are talking about the voter list. And so what do you think? Should it be improved, or a new voter list can be made? You just mentioned that you don't want to make suggestions, but what's your observation?
Any voters list in any country can be improved. And the better the quality of the voters list, clearly the more confidence in the electoral system. There is an opportunity now to improve the voters list. And you'll never remove every problem in the voters list, but you can, I believe, deal with the question of duplicate names, which we'd identified. And if you have the opportunity, you should avail yourself of the opportunity. That will make a stronger democratic framework in Bangladesh. But again, I come back to the point that it requires confidence in the system, that the political parties be confident in it, that the public understand that the democratic process is working to express their preferences and is not something that is being imposed on them in terms of any kind of outcome that isn't considered free and fair.
You know that the new chief election commissioner and another election commissioner has sworn in, and they will take the responsibility and shoulder for holding the next general elections. It is expected. But what is your thinking about the role of an ideal election commission, which can hold a very free, fair, and impartial election in your international, taking into account your international experience?
You look at international experience, and I've worked in Taiwan during its transition to democracy. Have worked in Argentina, Chile, Brazil, small degree Uruguay, and seeing how those democratic institutions have strengthened. It really depends upon a commitment of those in positions of responsibility to say, look, this is our task, we've got to move forward on this, and it's that discussion, and I think in that sense, the ability to be able to speak to international experts, to gain some perspective on it from a different eyes is very important. And I would just say, it's not a two-way street. I, for instance, worked in the last Canadian election, and there were international observers from many countries that came through Canada during that election process. Certainly in the United States, you know, NDI is an American-based institution. There are international delegations that go and watch the American elections. And so it should be viewed as that democratic nations have a tremendous stake in democracy in other countries, in a sense, to validate their own democratic commitments. The United States is the oldest democracy in the world. One would expect that it has an extraordinarily high degree of interest in democracy, given its own history. So
should it be that the Election Commission engaged in a very constructive dialogue with the political parties? That should be the prime...
I believe that's essential. We said that before January 22nd, and we're certainly saying it after it, that the political parties have to be engaged in the process of reform, that a whole series of technical steps that failed to have the buy-in of the political parties may be technically great, but there has to be some kind of dialogue with the parties, because ultimately that's what an election is about. It's various parties squaring off against each other in a forum that's provided that they feel confident enough that they will accept the results.
You have been working on the democratic development process of the political parties. So in your view, what are the standards of the Bangladeshi political parties in terms of international standard?
People may be a little surprised to hear me say this, but in fact, the structure of the Bangladesh political parties is quite developed and quite mature. Sure, they'll have some problems. They'll tell you themselves they have these problems. But if you look at it in an international context, they are well organized. They have a process where they've managed to aggregate opinion well. People know the boat, people know the sheep.
The democratization process into the political parties is a big question at this moment.
They've shown they can do it in the past. There's no question. There is a history, a vibrant history of democracy in Bangladesh, where the parties have come together. There is no reason that I could think of why that couldn't happen again. And I am encouraged that it can happen again. And NDI has a commitment to the electoral process in the countries we work to succeeding. And whatever assistance anyone may ask of us, we'll try and provide that.
The international community and the diplomats from the outer world has been urging the government and new administrations, caretaker administration, to hold and take preparation for holding a election as soon as possible. So what your expectation, what do you expect from?
Well, first of all, I'm not a diplomat. I must say I'm a fair number of notches below such an august position. We have said that we would like to see an election as soon as possible. I think the question is not so much timing, though timing is clearly an issue, because the time has not been specified, and that will lead to questions. What is important is to set out what are the conditions that will be in place for that election. And I think the caretaker government, obviously they're thinking on this, and I would encourage them to say, look, this is what we can do, this is what we can start. The election will follow with these things being in place. Now, I would also encourage them that that's a dialogue that's got to take place with the political actors, with civil society, and to the degree that international community can say anything, contribute that process, it's as an expression of goodwill.
Recently, the European Union, who also have suspended their activities, election observation mission, but they all are going to resume their operations observation mission. So what you will do from your NDIs?
I don't know as to
European
you characterize what the EU is doing correctly. I don't obviously work with them. What we have said is that, look, we will continue to be here in Bangladesh. We'll continue, obviously, to observe the situation. That hasn't changed. The same issues that existed before January 22nd exist today, and we're willing, to contribute in whatever way we can to how the political parties, civil society address those issues.
So do you have any plan to sit with the newly reconstituted election commission?
Well, you have to be asked. So, I hope they'll want to at least get a brief from us on, for instance, the work we did on the voters list and related issues.
So out of curiosity, what is the basic relation with the Democratic Party of the United States and the National Democratic Institute?
NDI clearly has a relationship with the Democratic Party in the sense that our board, our former, and I would point this out, former Democratic elected representatives. Our chairman is Madeleine Albright, the former Secretary of State under President Clinton. But it's not a relationship where they are guiding the hands-on operation of NDI. NDI stands as an NGO, and clearly there's going to be the discussion between like-minded people. But NDI is moving to broaden its activities, and it operates overseas. It doesn't operate in the United States.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wen Lippert.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Dear viewers, Lippert says India's goal in Bangladesh is to demonstrate how Bangladeshi political actors can refocus their electoral and parliamentary strategies from one of traditional disharmony, confrontation, to one of a focus on the constituent voters. He emphasized on the proper development of democratic institutions like Parliament, and they're interested to provide practical assistance for advancing democratic values, practices, and institutions. That's it for today. See you on next episode. Bye-bye.